And that clip you just heard was the 2022 film Athena, directed by Roman Gavras, if that is how you pronounce it. I'm joined by Dennis Cadigan to talk about this French action, political, or I guess you could call it a lot of things. But first of all, Dennis, I'll ask you, what is your feeling on the single take, the long shot? What's your feeling on that when you see it in a movie? In terms of we've had fantastic ones over the years, and this movie certainly is built around it in many ways. But what's your immediate thoughts when you see something like that style of filmmaking, shall we say?
It seems to have been done a lot recently in the last few years. It's something that I feel like 10, 15 years ago it would have been more unique. But lately, a
Mm,
lot of things seem to be doing it. I mean, obviously, Athena, but even going back to other French action movies, like District 13 had a bit of it going on, with the
mm,
acrobatics and stuff. And then obviously everything from Gangs of London, John Wick. They don't all have it
yeah.
as they don't all build it like most of the movie around like Athena does, but they definitely have it in different scenes. So yeah, I would say in the last few years, it's definitely unique. Is not a word we can throw around about it. And as to how it works, yeah, I mean, I would say because it's more common now. There are scenes and movies where it works well, and there are aspects to where it doesn't work quite the same way because it's either
Mm.
overused or there's not as much thought through it. So yeah, I mean, we'll get to how it is used in Athena as well, but definitely in terms of like you mentioned, a single take and that type of action and tracking shots. Yeah, I think it's been used a lot in action movies, particularly in the last few years. I would say.
Yeah. I would agree with that. And obviously, there's famous ones like in Goodfellas, and Paul Thomas Anderson does it a lot in order to. I feel like, and this is why I'm framing this start of the review of this movie like that. I feel like directors like Scorsese or Paul Thomas Anderson, when they do it's often to frame your perspective of the world. You're being brought along on this journey into this club, into this porn set. In the case of Boogie Nights, I think that's when they do the one take, and it's used to just really give you a sense of disorientation almost in the world, because it's often the Mark Wahlberg character, someone who's not familiar with the area. And then we have movies like there's a very famous one. I think you'll remember this one, of course, is Children of Men, where they do it very action based in terms of there's a lot of chaos, and it doesn't really draw attention to itself. I think when it's done well, in terms of you're following the action and your eye is on the action first, and then maybe at a certain point, organically, you feel like, oh, this movie hasn't cut for a while. And in John Wick, you're interested in there's a great scene in John Wick 4. Have you seen John Wick 4 yet?
Yeah, yeah.
Or
Are you talking about the top down scene of the house?
yeah,
Yeah, with
yeah,
the gun that's shooting fire or flames or anything. Yeah, and it literally pans all the way around, doesn't it, up the stairs and everything. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. So there's that scene, and it almost it's secondary that it's a single take, and you're getting so many more things from the movie other than that perspective. And so Athena starts with this press conference where we get this soldier character. Let me try and find the names up here before I forget. Abdil is the soldier's name, and he's giving a press conference about this. Well, it's initially unclear, but it becomes clear as the movie goes on. And I believe there's footage of what appears to be police beating this teenager in the suburbs of Athena. And he's given this press conference, and then slowly the camera. I thought it was going to go completely different when you get that press conference. I thought we are almost going to get a flashback, but the camera slowly starts to zoom on another character called, I think his name is, let me get this right, because
is it Kareem?
Kareem. Yeah, Kareem, that's right. Fires, and he lights this. this pipe bomb or whatever, this
Molotov.
Molotov, and then he fires this bomb at this the press conference, and then from this point on, all hell breaks loose, doesn't it? And it becomes a very stylized long take. What was your thoughts upon initially seeing the transition from the earlier few minutes and then that opening segment of pure chaos? I'm curious how you took it.
Yeah, the opening scene is really good. It's straight into the action. Like you said, at the press conference, you thought you're actually going to get a bit more plot than you do get, and like we don't really get a whole lot of plot in this movie anyway. But it's you kind of might expect more characters to speak, or someone else to take over the
Yeah,
press conference, or some more uh, faces to be introduced. But literally, it goes from Abdul to Kareem, and then you can see he's angry about something. He throws the Molotov, and then the next that whole scene is really well done. It's just right up until the
yeah,
credits when they basically, like you said, tried to get out of there, like scarper out the door, and the cops are in pursuit and everything else, and then they're the ones who are trying to be like in control while also getting back to what's the banlieue, I guess in French, the suburban place.
yeah,
And it's just all the camera work's very impressive. It just keeps following them, and then that's kind of it's a good setup, definitely for sure. And they all, straight
yeah,
away, like we mentioned, District B13, they also had a few kind of assault on Precinct 13 vibes in reverse. Instead of them kind of going to the
yeah,
police
yeah.
station, it's like they're trying to get out of there after, like you said, causing chaos, causing havoc, trying to get away from the cops after starting the party, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah. I I had conflicting thoughts while I was watching that opening sequence in terms of the transition into all out chaos in a singular take. It was very visually impressive, and it was very much like a war zone in terms of they basically raid this. I think it's the police station, but they rob a safe. Yeah, there's a great scene that reminds me of Captain Phillips when the Somalian pirates hijacked the ship, and Barta Abdi, I think is his name. He goes to Tom Hanks. I'm the captain now, and there's a scene after they raid the police station in which they're like we're the police now, which is really interesting. And but as impressive as the opening scene is in terms of its choreography and its conception, there's a certain thing I'm running into now that I don't enjoy in single take movies, or when they do these single takes. It reminds me of, do you know when you're playing a video game and there's cut scenes, and it's almost designed that this thing has to whiz by at this point, and this scripted event is programmed into the computer in order, as I'm walking by this point, this will happen and this will happen. And obviously the idea of it is it's it's meant to seamlessly combine with the viewer experience. But when I was watching this movie, and even from the very beginning, I became painfully aware that, oh, this is meant to happen at this exact point, and rather, instead of watching chaos ensue, it seemed very orderly and very scripted, and more like everyone was hitting its mark, as much as it was visually impressive. I don't know how you felt about that.
After the opening scene, I think I definitely felt like that as the things came by, because it became clear pretty early on that they wanted to do a few, let's say, minor plot twists about certain characters, which for me
Yeah,
didn't really land because the characters never really got developed in the first place. I mean, it's one of those movies
yeah,
where, let's say, if like certain characters got killed off even earlier, it wouldn't really matter, because at one point I was thinking that's the way it's going to go. It might be like this guy dies and then another character comes in and takes over the mob, and it wouldn't really register anyway, because the characters don't get, they do a strange thing where, like you said, there's so much one take action, and then every now and again it will just stop and have a character kind of cry and try and do an emotional thing, but none of those moments really
yeah,
land again, because we're never quite sure about their motivations, which we'll get into anyway, because it's kind of hard to summarize that side of a story without saying who they all are, which is supposedly a kind of a
yeah.
twist in itself, right? Like you mentioned.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's part of the confusion in a way because obviously we get Abdil, who's the soldier, and he's given the press conference, and then we see this other guy, Kareem, throw the pipe bomb, and then before we know it, we get it is a very impressive sequence on their journey back to Athena, and you get these motorbikes doing wheelies and all these cool things happening. And it reminded you of that scene from Creed, actually, where he's doing the montage, and all of a sudden this stylized showpiece begins, and it is a very stylized movie, and it seemed to be lacking direction at times as well. And I found out later on that the director he cuts his corner normally in music videos, and I wonder if that's the reason why it felt like he's often technically proficient. And all he does is very skilled, and something that I could never do for sure. But in terms of a narrative and a plot of a movie, it seemed to be missing large chunks of it. And I never knew which movie we were going to get. And obviously, after the opening scene, we get Kareem sieging down Athena, the council estate. And I thought the actor who played Kareem, I don't know his name now, he was very good. He had a great angry look, and he was able to convey a lot of emotion and a lot of sadness and a lot of anger in just a look at times. And obviously, the script is probably the weak point of this movie, but he was able to do a lot uh, just with the visuals of his face that the script couldn't do. And at this point, I'm thinking, are we going to get, like you said, what was the movie you just said there? The Precinct,
Oh, Assault on
Assault on
Precinct.
Precinct 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt, oh, are we going to get a movie like that in reverse, like you said? Are we going to get the raid? Is this the raid one where it's in lockdown, and the soldier guy has to get through the barricades? Where's the story going to develop here? And then I actually had forgotten about the soldier, and I thought, oh, maybe he must be just a red herring where it begins, and we're going to see Kareem just versus the cops. And obviously, with the one takes, the single takes, should I say, the continuous camera, you need someone to focus on. And I felt like the movie was setting up these different people for us to focus on, in terms of there's a character, Sebastian, who's this over the top drug dealer in the area, and he's trying to get out. And we're following him trying to get out before the shit hits the fan. And I'm guessing, okay, he's going to be one perspective from this night. And then the cop who is charging on, I think it's his first day or one of his few days. Oh, this is going to be another perspective we're going to get from the cop's point of view. Because if you're going to be doing this dazzling camera, even when Scorsese give us that intro into the nightclub, the follow is following waiters and waitresses and objects in order to keep us focused. So I presumed, because we're going to get these characters, they're not really going to be narratively linked, but they're just going to be our way into all these cool spectacle pieces. And maybe we're going to get this perspective, and maybe we're going to get this other perspective, but it doesn't really come together in that way, does it?
Yeah, not at all. Yeah, like compared to all those movies we talked about earlier, like I mean, I love The Raid and Assault on Precinct 13 because again, you mentioned that those movies know what they want to be from the beginning, and they may not develop characters very much, but that's not the point of the movies either because they know where they're going. The plot is sending you in a certain direction, and like all
Yeah,
the visuals complement it. And the visuals aren't there for the sake of just being kind of like you said, pyrotechnics impressive. Whereas here, about 30 minutes in, I knew exactly what kind of movie it was in that sense that it's just going to be trying to impress you. And, you know, there's only so many times you can watch guys running past each other in a hall going, go, 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 down the stairs, go down the stairs.
yeah,
If there's no real, like, meat to it, and like you said, you don't
yeah,
know if it's going to be about the cops coming in or trying to, like, stop the siege. There's a bit too much of this whole, like, keep moving. And it's like, okay, but what is, like,
yeah,
what's the end game here? And yeah, once they do
yeah,
that the fourth or fifth time, then it's kind of like you know the movie's in trouble in terms of like where it's going, what it's going to end up with, and you still don't have like a motivation. You kind of have a very threadbare explanation of yeah, the cops supposedly killed this guy's brother, and like the streets are ready to riot, which is yeah, you know, it's a very simple setup. It's a kind of thing that could have been used in the '60s with civil rights. It could have been used in the '90s with Rodney King. You know, it's always
yeah,
a prescient question in and of itself. But here, it's not enough to explain everything else, I would say.
Yeah, I felt like after a while that it's almost the same way professional wrestling simulates combat. It's it looks cool, and but it's not combat, is it? And you're kind of dancing around. It's everything but even though you're trying to convince us it is that. And after a while, like the 30, like you mentioned, the first 30 minutes, you're not fully sure what the movie's up to, in which way. I actually thought it was going to be one take for the whole movie at that point, but then it pulls back, and you're not fully sure what the movie's up to, and then you get to a point, and like you said, it, there's all these flares going off, and people are running, but you've not contextualized it in terms of an actual narrative, or give us a character to root for, really, or give us it just seemed like we're watching it for the sake of you showing off, because it doesn't really come together in any way. And when they do try and bring in the plot elements, it gets worse, really, doesn't it? I don't know how you felt.
Yeah, it's very messy. There's a certain point even where I didn't know the secondary characters anyway, and it was kind of like, oh, which guy is this again? And once people
Yeah,
started inevitably being killed off, I kind of just say, I don't care who lives, who dies.
yeah.
I don't have like a dog in a fight, so to speak. At that stage, no character would really resonate with you. It hasn't been shown whether, like, let's say, who actually is at fault and what happened, and that's probably another thing that's lacking. Like, if you had seen it, I mean, yeah, they capture the anger, fair enough, that's one thing, but it doesn't really show us, like you said, what exactly happened, and they want to have like
Mm,
their own kind of plot twist around that side of things later as well, which comes far too late anyway. And even then, you have an idea.
yeah.
It's all a bit telegraphed in that kind of respect, like that this is going to come, and it's a movie that, like, despite all those pyrotechnics and everything else, and like you mentioned, the one take, it doesn't really surprise you. It can confuse you, but that's not necessarily a good thing, It,
Yeah, it almost, you know what this could have really done with, and I guess it's the movie I wanted more than the movie was made, but I never felt like I even knew what the movie we were watching was trying to be. So I think it may be justified in saying what I'm saying. It it would have been good if they attached a genre to this movie, because it's not quite an action movie, and in fact, for all the cool visuals, I don't remember any action sequences that stand out in the slightest. I don't even remember any action sequences other than the first 20-30 minutes, where maybe it's a bit of chaos, but in terms of an action sequence, it's not quite an action sequence, really, in terms of anything other than it just looks pretty. Like that, you could have Post Mahone rapping around that, and or someone like that, and it's like, oh yeah, it would suit that, but it doesn't really suit any genre. And you've got this soldier who's ready to go, and we're going to have to get into spoilers now anyway, to even explain this. But it was unclear to me to begin with that, first of all, Kareem is Abdul's brother, which is fair enough to begin with. They're brothers, and then it turned out that the boy who was beaten up is also their brother,
the
and
drug
then it
dealer, yeah.
turns out that the drug dealer was also their brother. And I mean, talk about repeating. Like, I think you only get one. You only get one. This is my brother link in a movie. Maybe two. Maybe two. In because it adds. I understand it adds chaos, and you don't have to do much script writing in terms of, oh, that's the brother on that side of the law, and this is another brother who's in the siege. Oh, that's conflict. In fact, the raid does that, even though it doesn't really matter in the raid. But it's like, okay, you're throwing a little wrinkle into it, just to, it's an easy one, because I mean, I don't have a brother, but you have a brother, but everyone can relate to, oh, it's family now. It means a bit more. But there's about five brothers in this movie, and it just gets very convoluted, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit of EastEnders to go, yeah, he's actually my brother, and then, like, by that time, it's they're trying to sweep the rug out. And another character that kind of confused me as well was you said, is Sebastian the drug dealer? So who was the guy that was in the
Uh,
middle of the? in the middle of the housing
Oh, maybe that
project.
is Sebastian.
That guy, yeah. So at first
Oh,
they were,
maybe he's Sebastian. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. If that's Sebastian, then that guy, I didn't know what his deal was either, because he's kind of introduced as a character that they need to kind of protect, maybe slightly autistic or something. They're like, get him inside, Sebastian. And then 20 minutes
Yeah.
later, he's the one like setting up all their weapons. So I don't know what they were trying to do with this guy. So he went from like,
I
yeah, confused man child to like setting up the next revolution within 20 minutes.
well, this is what confused me about this movie in many ways because it did become a bit EastEnders, but then it made me think: is this director or is this script trying to make a political commentary on France and racial relations, and in terms of anyone could be this and anyone could be this character? And if that is what they're doing, I mean, I'm not from France, but I have a grasp of how to make a good movie, for sure. But if that's what they're trying to do, then I found it pretty hokey. I like this guy represents the army of France. This guy represents the disenfranchised youth of France. This guy represents the business, corrupt drug side of France, and they're all from the same mother, so they're all grown by the same uh, by the same country. Maybe that's what they were trying to say. But if that is what they were trying to say, then it's underdeveloped. It didn't even work in terms of a metaphor and an allegory in ways that I've seen in other movies. But I will say I don't like that trope to begin with. I like people to feel like characters rather than mouthpieces. But these characters were so underdeveloped in terms of either characters or either metaphors that it didn't work on both sides of it.
Yeah, that's true. Like, those secondary characters are a joke, basically. Like, they don't seem to do anything kind of with motivation or. And yeah, the cop who gets kidnapped as well, they drag that out as much as
Oh
they can.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's about 10 minutes where he's being threatened to be killed, and it's like, either do it or don't, because, he's going to figure it out either way. You just go through with the motivation or not. So yeah, it's just a lot of wasted time for a quite short movie, you have to say. Considering,
yeah,
like I said, the 10 minutes, you said it's a bit chaotic, but for me, yeah, at least it looked like it was setting something up, but then it just
yeah,
never really did. So, like, yeah, after too much kind of tracking shots, then you have characters upset, crying. There's a wake in the middle of the Ban Louis, and when all this riot is going on, that his funeral is on at the same time, and that's kind of, I thought that was a bit clunky the way they set that up, because it's kind of like, okay, just evacuate the place. People are coming back here now, and in
yeah,
this part of the suburb, they're all carrying on as if everything's normal, just standing in the room. I get that there's kind of
yeah,
bravery in saving face, but by that stage, things are already on fire outside, and there's people throwing Molotovs back and forth. So there's things like that
yeah,
as well, kind of like setups.
yeah. And I will say, getting back to that character, I'm glad you. I can't remember his name, but he's in his garden tending to the flowers with his headphones. And I was confused because to begin with, I was like, and I was watching this with my partner, and she asked me, he's like, "What's so special about this guy?" Like she came in halfway through, and like at that point, I didn't know. But I thought, okay, poor. Is he simple? Is he autistic? Is he? He's obviously doesn't care about what's going on. So he must be really. He must be really like, oh, protect this poor little guy. And then later on, when the army guy says, "Oh, could you help them out there and open up the safe?" He's sure, and at that point, I'm thinking, is this guy a full on psycho? Is he a Is he a terrorist? Is that what he's meant to be? So was he so nonchalant about all this chaos going on because he's an extremist? Because the media did allude to the fact that there was extremists in the area in the tower block, and then he's able to rig up all these explosives later on, and so I'm thinking, so he's not simple, is he? Is he? So he's not simple. Or
The
is he a terrorist? Or how can he do all that? And we never know. What's your
complex
take on this guy?
complex rocket launchers and everything, yeah, and just like putting it all and showing some of the other young guys how to do it as well. Unless they were going for
Yeah.
a French version of Tom from Father Ted, I'm not really sure. Like if he was supposed to like bring in some humor at some stage, because like that was, I know it's a serious movie. It's supposed to be like some guy died and everything, but you know, if you're not going to hit the heights of, let's say, the Raid or Assault on Precinct 13, then you have, like, say, on the other end, which is kind of like comedy at times, but District 13, you know, does have humor. It's a
Yeah.
silly
Yeah.
movie, I mean,
Yeah.
but it's got some great stunts, and it's like it's an easy watch because it's probably a similar
Yeah.
length, but that movie knows what it's about ultimately, right? And that movie has kind of sequence, and you know,
Yeah.
not so much in character development, but at least you know what they're doing and what their motivations are. So if you break it down in that way, you know, Athena doesn't even go up alongside District 13, let alone Assault on Precinct 13, The Raid, all those others, Children of Men mentioned. Not a chance. Yeah.
Yeah. And I never understood, other than Kareem, I never understood why any character was doing what they were doing in the slightest. Because in again, this is right in a movie that doesn't exist, but in a movie that's doing its stuff and at least linked to any kind of genre, or even maybe gets through the message that it wants to in this, where brothers will be against brothers, where everyone will be fighting against themselves. In a movie that does its stuff, you build on the 30 minutes that started in this movie, and then you build on the rest of the movie, which is only an hour after that point, of the brother trying to get in to the Athena and even rescue the cop. Like there's ingredients here for this to be a very good movie, and then you can build the visual style around this movie. But the story is so strange, and they just don't go anywhere with it. And in fact, we're going to get into deep spoilers now, but there's this, the army brother Abdul breaks into the Athena. Well, actually, he gets let in once they realize he's Kareem's brother, and then he's the cop that got kidnapped. He's trying to bring him out, and he's running away. And then I thought, oh, okay, now we're in the movie where he's going to get out with the cop. Oh, that's going to be cool. Trying to see that. That movie doesn't happen. And then we get a scene where Kareem is holding a Molotov, and I think the actor is really good actually, and he's the bright spark of the movie. And he's about to throw the Molotov, and then the cops shoot him, and he goes up on fire. And then Abdul, without any reasoning or any motivation, is now being
Uh,
Kareem.
yeah.
Uh, like he's being Kareem, he's taking on Kareem's role. So it's either why have Kareem in it to begin with, why have Kareem dying, and why even have Abdul in it if now he's switched midway through to take on the exact same thing. It's almost like nothing had a consequence because they were so underdeveloped characters anyway that you've just had a death for maybe a bit of excitement, and then you've switched over now to this person carrying the mantle. Unless you're trying to say that hate and trauma can get carried on to someone else once this happens to another member of your family. But even if that's the case, it was done badly as well.
Yeah, that whole scene was a mess, and it was like you said, Kareem's probably the best thing about it. Even it's the closest thing to a character. He doesn't even speak very much, but I think his motivations
Yeah,
are clearer than others. At least, like with his facial expressions give a lot. So that was good about, like you said, a bright spark. But that scene, yeah, where he's basically threatening to throw a Molotov cocktail at Abdul through the fencing, and then the cops come up behind him.
yeah,
That was ridiculous. It was set up for about 5 minutes. He almost died in slow
yeah,
motion. It's basically a step away from Hot Shots Part Two style. That like you know at that stage when the slow mo Molotov cocktail exploding,
yeah, yeah,
and then like you said, Abdul gets annoyed and beats up his other supposed half brother drug dealer.
yeah.
Yeah, so by that stage, yeah, all concept of somewhat sanity is just completely lost. I think
And I think he even kills his brother.
possibly, yeah, it's never really.
I think I think he just loses it and beats his head up. And then I was trying to fill in the blanks for the character. You know, it's a bad thing when you're trying to fill in the blanks. I was writing a whole backstory. Did his brother end up killing the other brother? Did he know something about it? And then did Abdul know? Like, I was really confused as to why all these things were happening. And even in terms of how stylized good it was, how well stylized it was. Like, we do get this fantastic scene where the riots and they fire the the Molotovs on top, and they
Oh, the
keep them
shields, yeah,
safe with
yeah.
the shields. Yeah, and going across the storm and the brigades with the the ladders. It's almost like something in ancient Rome or ancient Greece, which I guess they were going to. That looked fabulous. But in terms of a framing of a simple scene, we have this scene where the cops shoot Kareem and he gets burnt, and then the cops are gone. Like they're completely gone. And maybe they went around the other side to sort out the other guys, but it's just like that's very bad blocking. And then later on, we have this scene where, like he says, when he beats up Sebastian, and then the cop turns to Abdul and it's like, "Sorry about your brothers." And okay, I can see why you're sorry about Kareem because he died by the cops. But why are you telling someone sorry about your other brother to the person who murdered his other brother? It doesn't make sense. None of this movie makes sense in terms of why people are doing anything other than Kareem.
Yeah, yeah. The script is pretty bad to say the least. I mean, yeah, just for the setup, like you said, they're trying to make a few different movies on top of each other. Like the obvious influences we mentioned earlier. Also, maybe something like La Haine from the '90s, that also French
Mm,
cinema, which is obviously much more dramatic and well acted in terms of like developing again character motivations around racial prejudice and all the rest. And yeah, that's a movie with a good script, though I would say, and that kind of put a lot of
mm.
French kind of dramatic cinema on the map in the '90s in a way that this, people will see this and say, oh, it's French cinema, so it's going to be a bit maybe classier than your average, like,
Yeah,
big budget Hollywood thing of the same kind of like style. But actually, it's kind of what makes it more disappointing is that it has those ingredients, like you mentioned, for kind of a La Haine meets The Raid meets Assault in Precinct 13,
mm.
tied in together with some new stuff because there's plenty of space either way, like to do all that with with the things that you expect, but none of it ties together basically.
Yeah, and they bring in another twist later on again in terms of the police mightn't have even been the person who beat the boy, and that's cool in itself in a very focused movie because Kareem has made this stand based on a lie or what we actually get a conclusion that it is a lie when we get the sequence at the end, and there's actually a lot of meat to that subject where this guy has made a stand based on police brutality and police abusing their powers, which is true, but he's built it on an actual event that's a lie, and he's dragged other people into it. There's a great motivation to that movie, but by the time that's even confirmed, Kareem is dead anyway, and Abdul doesn't give a fuck about that really, in terms of the same way Kareem does. So again, this is kind of social commentary in terms of, oh, we're fighting amongst ourselves, brothers and sisters. It's really the far right that is in charge of racial relations in this country, and that's fine to say, and it's true. But in terms of how you're trying to convey it through this movie, it's again that doesn't even work.
Yeah, you know what I would have liked better there is I like the confusion around that in terms of the people were kind of spreading rumors saying it wasn't the cops, it wasn't the cops, and the cops were saying
Yeah,
that. I liked a little bit of that small angle saying that, like, it's someone else. And what would have almost made it stronger is because they just confirm it right at the very end. It's literally the last shot. It's too late, like you
yeah,
said, to do anything. It doesn't resolve anything. You kind of have an idea anyway. They should have left that hanging a little bit and just say, like, there's kind of a rumor that
yeah,
it's not the cops.
yeah,
That would have made it a bit kind of stronger because not knowing is kind of like maybe
yeah.
worse than just showing it blatantly at the end, or at least showing it earlier to kind of confirm and then saying, oh, okay, and maybe the other characters will never know. So yeah, it's just about editing and putting that in at a certain stage again with the script and the plot. Yeah,
Yeah, they made almost every possible wrong choice they could, in my opinion, and I'm guessing yours, because like you said, that was a nice angle to it. That there's like the rumor and confusion in social media, people not trusting the cops, people not trusting each other, false information. That's brilliant. Like that stuff as a rumor mill in the pit of chaos is fantastic. But oh, we get this scene after everything is tied up, after the building is blown up, after Abdul has died, after the autistic terrorist has blown up everything. Then we get confirmation. Oh, okay, it was the far right. Okay, yeah, okay, cool. I guess like that. That means even less now. Yeah, it's the wrong choice. I mean, we've pretty much bashed this movie, but I think deservedly so. But you know, it's got very high ratings elsewhere, so I'm sure they can be. You can make up your own mind. But what I will say is that I would be very excited to see what this director does next. I just want to get his name again, Roman uh, Gavras, if that's how you pronounce it. Um, I I do want to see what he does next because he is very talented and
Yeah, yeah, I agree with all that. Like you said, you can see the kind of the good shots and everything else, and the one tracking shots, and it's just that the substance lets them down really big time. The lack of character, the like you said, incoherent plot and character motivations. All of those things make you stop kind of noticing the visuals after a while. Even the last scene where, or what before the last scene where we see this the far right doing all of the yeah, taking out all the crimes first of all, and then when Abdul basically blows himself up right at the end, that like that scene should be poignant or powerful, but by then I'm like, I just don't care because he kind of like he spent half the movie kind of crying about what he was going to do, and then you know the cops are telling him you need to go undercover, get the other cop out, and then he has a complete change of character as well halfway through, and finally he just takes himself out. And yeah, it should be affecting, but it's not at all. Like the shot looks good when it kind of blows up from the outside, but that's about it.